everyone, this is Crystal, and today I am working on a 12 by 12 layout. I am going to be doing some mixed media. So I have a sheet of Basil Marshmallow cardstock. This is just a white heavy duty cardstock that works well for mixed media. I've already added a layer of clear gesso. I used the Dina Wakley clear gesso using my Prima 2-inch silicone brush. So that is already on the page and completely dry. My plan is to use this adorable stencil, the Little Rainbow Stencil from scrapbook.com, on my background, but I want to get some color down before I start adding in the rainbows. So I am going to experiment here and try something a little bit different for me. I have the Vicki Boutin watercolors, and I'm going to pull out the black. And then I also have some just really inexpensive white acrylic paint, and I'm gonna try and make a background out of that and then add the stencil on top of it. So I'm gonna go ahead and put you on fast forward and we'll see how it goes. I may not like the way it turns out, and that's just fine. We'll start over if that happens, but yeah, we're just gonna give it a go. Okay, so I'm going to start by adding just a little bit of this black watercolor paint to my palette. This is just a really inexpensive plastic palette that I've had in my stash for years. And then I also added a little bit of that white acrylic paint, and I'm adding water and mixing the two together and just kind of using my brush to move some around the page. I'm going to end up adding quite a bit of water here. I don't want it to be a super opaque application of this paint on the paper. So I'm going to add quite a bit of water. I'm going to keep mixing the two. I'm going to get some variation in shade by adding a bit more of the black in some areas and a bit more of the white in others, so that I have shades of gray in the background instead of just a solid color. And I want it to be an organic shape. So I'm just kind of letting the water move around on the page, using my paintbrush to push it this way and that a little bit. And then I'm going to add some splatters around the edges, just again to give it that kind of more organic look. I did get some splatters in some places I didn't want them, but because I had gessoed my background, I was able to lift those up really easily with just a baby wipe. So I grabbed a smaller paintbrush to get some smaller splatters, and then I am going to use my heat tool and use that to dry this. So if I had let it dry naturally, it would have kept its more homogeneous, I want to say, like it wouldn't have the lines. So when I flip it over here, you can see kind of the dark edges around some of the lines. That's because I used the heat tool, and that's the look that I wanted. I wanted it to look kind of like a gray cloud. So the whole concept here is that my title is going to be "You Are My Sunshine, You Make Me Happy When Skies Are Gray." So I'm going to use that rainbow stencil over the top of this, and this is going to be kind of like that gray sky behind it, or at least that was my intention. I do end up keeping it. I don't end up redoing this, but it didn't quite turn out the way I had hoped. So in the end, I'll talk to you about what maybe I would have done differently to change this process a little bit. Okay, so you saw me add a few white splatters as well on top, and then I set it aside to dry completely. So even though I had used my heat tool to dry it, it still needed to dry a bit more. So I set it aside for a little while, and I actually swatched these watercolors while that was drying, and then I'm back now with some modeling paste and 3 of the Vicki Boutin watercolors. These watercolors don't have names, so I can't tell you which ones they are, but it's a kind of pink one, a teal one, and a yellow one. And I'm using the watercolors to color the modeling paste, and I didn't want to mix it in completely. I wanted it to have kind of a marbled look. I wasn't completely successful with that. They mixed in pretty quickly as I was adding them, but I was able to get some kind of white striations through the modeling paste. And now that those are mixed, I'm going to add them to this stencil. This is the Little Rainbow Stencil from scrapbook.com, and just kind of randomly. So I'm not trying to create any particular pattern. I'm just kind of adding the different colors here and there around the stencil and trying to cover the whole thing. So all these little rainbows will get covered. in one of these three colors. I'm just trying to get it balanced, not, like I said, not really a pattern, just trying to get it so that there's a bit of each of the colors in each of the places. And then I'm using the scraper tool. This is a new tool from scrapbook.com to scrape off all that excess and get a really smooth finish to the top. So normally when I use modeling paste, it ends up being kind of chunky and rough, and you do still get that rough texture, but by using that scraper over the top, I get a really smooth kind of top edge to it. Okay, so I went away and cleaned up my modeling paste mess, let this dry just a little bit, and then I'm going to come in with those same three colors of watercolor and just add a bit of water and create some splatters all around in those three colors, the pink, teal, and yellow. And then I'm going to put this aside for quite a while and let it dry completely. So while I'm doing that, I'm going to work on my title. So I have the bold caps, outline, and solid stamps from scrapbook.com, and I'm going to use my sand eraser to go over these. These are brand new stamps. This is the first time I've used them. So I'm going to use my sand eraser to go over them and make sure that I'm able to get a really crisp image when I stamp these out. And I'm going to start with the solid, and I'm going to stamp out my title. So this is just another piece of the same Basil Marshmallow cardstock that I started with. This is not gessoed, this is just the cardstock. And I'm going to cut these letters out. I'm going to fussy cut each of these letters. So I'm not trying to get the title lined up. I'm just trying to get the entire thing down on the page. So I'm alternating between three inks here. There you can see there's my finished title. Actually, it's not finished. I still have to do the outline, but I was using Hero Art Soft Pool, that same Hampton Art pink that I had tried on a previous project and failed with, and then yellow ink from Studio Calico, and I can't quite remember the name of it, but I'm pretty sure it's no longer available anyway. Okay, so now I am stamping the outline around these bold caps letters with some dark gray ink. This is also from Studio Calico. I think it's called Power Suit. And I'm not trying to get them lined up perfectly. I want them to be a little bit offset, a little bit wonky, to try and kind of get that look. I'm just going over each one. And then, like I said, I'm going to fussy cut these out. So, like I said before, I used the same pink Hampton Art ink that I had used in a previous project and had a total fail with. I will not end up using those pink letters either. So you're going to see here in just a little bit that I come back and I restamp them in a different pink ink. This time I used Pink Lemonade ink from scrapbook.com. And I have decided to get rid of this Hampton Art ink. It's clearly not working for me. I clearly don't like it. I am just going to add it to my giveaway pile, and maybe somebody else will enjoy it more. So there you can see there is the lighter pink ink that I end up going with, and not that bright pink. So the background is completely dry now. I can start working on the layers behind my photo and the embellishing and all of that fun stuff. So I have the Hey Hello collection from Pebbles and Jen Hadfield. I have the 6x8 paper pad. I have one of the ephemera packs, and then I have the 6x12 cardstock stickers as well. This is where I drew the colors from when I decided which of the Vicki Boutin watercolor inks to use. I had that stripe paper in mind, so I was basing them off of this collection, and I'm going to use that stripe paper to back my photo, but first I'm just going to add a little border of white cardstock behind it, and I do want to pop it up, so I'm going to grab some foam adhesive. This is also from scrapbook.com. I am going to use the foam dots, the large foam dots, to pop up my photo, and then I'm going to use those super awesome strips, the foam strips. They are like super thin foam strips. They made it so easy to add foam behind all of those tiny little letters in my title, which you'll see here in just a second. But I'm just adding a few dots behind my photo, and then I'm going to add that stripe paper behind it, and then I'm going to add that yellow paper behind the stripes. So I have a couple layers behind my photo just to bring in some color and tie in the colors that I had used in my mixed media. So just a thin border. I ended up making it a little bit too thick, so I'm going to trim it down a little bit more. which is a bit hard to do since I've added those foam dots already, but that's okay. I was able to make it work. And then again, just add the yellow paper behind that. Again, a very thin border of it. And this time I'm using my scrapbook.com roller adhesive since I'm not going to add any more dimension here. And then I can trim that down and start working on the rest of my layout. So I do want to trim off this branding strip from my background paper just because I find that if I leave it there, my layouts tend to be a little bit lopsided because visually it looks like there's more height to the paper than there actually is. So I make sure to go ahead and trim that off right away. And then I'm going to back all of these little letters with that really thin foam. And I don't make you watch this whole part, but it really didn't take very long. It was so easy to do with these thin foam strips. I am in love with these little thin foam strips. They really made it so easy to back. And I can't wait to try them on a delicate cut file because I think they are going to make a world of difference. Okay, so all of the letters have foam behind them. Now I'm going to add them back to the page and figure out where I want them so that I can figure out where my embellishment clusters are going to go. So I have that one kind of longer word, sunshine, and that's going to determine kind of where the other words need to sit. So I'm going to end up doing 3 lines, and these are really fiddly right now because they're not adhered. Yeah, so I do have to play around with them a little bit, but I like the way that looks, so I'm going to go with that. So now I can go through the ephemera pack and see if there's anything here that I want to include. I haven't used this collection yet, so this is all new to me. I wasn't really sure what was in this pack, and I think this is the, I think there are 2 ephemera packs maybe, and I think this is the one that's maybe more like card oriented. So not a lot of them really worked for this page, but I was able to find a couple things that I can add. Yeah, there's lots of kind of card themed sentiments here. So I'm just going to play around and see what will work. I actually don't end up using any of these now that I look at my finished page. So I played around and tried to create a couple clusters. This would have worked. I like that upper cluster, but I end up going with something else instead, which you'll see here in just a second. So I'm also going to look at the cardstock stickers. This is the 6x12 sticker sheet, and I find these florals, and I think that's perfect. That's exactly what I want here. So I'm going to grab 3 floral clusters off of this sheet, and I'm not sticking them down completely. I'm just kind of lightly setting them on the page because that's obviously not where they're going to end up going. But I wanted to kind of get a feel for what that triangle of clusters would look like if I added florals to the top and bottom corners and then across on the other side of the title as well. So then I decided to grab the 6x8 paper pad back out and see if there's any florals in here that I could fussy cut. I was pretty sure there were a few. I'm just trying to decide which ones, and I end up going with these kind of mustard yellow and gold foil florals, and I'm going to go ahead and cut those out. I have the larger, the 12x12 paper of this pattern, and it has a black outline, whereas the 6x8 paper pad has a gold outline. So I'm not sure which of the 2 I want to use yet, so I'm going to go ahead and fussy cut a bunch of both of these. So once again, I don't make you watch that. I do end up fussy cutting basically this whole 6x8 sheet and then, just a few from the 12x12 page. And that gives me a pile of florals to play with and figure out which ones I want to use on this page. So I'm going to pull off all the other little embellishments that I had here and start building up clusters of these florals. And I'm going to start by mixing the 2 to see if I like the way that looks. I don't end up going that direction. I end up choosing just the ones with the gold foil on them. But I do like the black ones as well. It just didn't quite work on this page. I think mostly because I didn't really have any other black. I had used gray on the background. I had used gray ink in my title, and the black just stood out a little bit too much. I even tried off camera, I tried adding a black outline around all the letters of my title. Like I grabbed some black cardstock and tried fussy cutting around each of the letters to see if adding some black behind them would help those black florals blend in a bit better, but I didn't like the way that it looked. So I decided just to pull off all the black flowers and stick with those gold foil flowers instead. And then, of course, keep those brightly colored florals from the sticker sheet in each of the clusters as well. So I'm just going to play around and get those clusters exactly the way that I want them. And then I think it's about time to start adhering things down to the page. So like I said, nothing is adhered down yet. That's why my title is moving all around, and that's starting to bug me a little bit. So I'm going to start gluing things together. So I feel like I need a little bit more pink on the side of my photo. So I grabbed this paper from the 6x8 paper pad and my border punch. This is a notebook edge punch from EK Success, and I just punched the edge of that, and I'm going to cut a little strip, and I'm going to use that down the side of my photo to bring in a little bit more texture over there and bring in some of the pink that is really standing out on the left side of the page. So that's going to just draw that color over and help tie it in a bit better. And like I said, it does add some texture as well. Okay, so I have that in place, and now I'm going to use my scrapbook.com double-sided tape. This is a 3/4 inch adhesive roll, and normally I don't use adhesive rolls like double-sided tape on my layouts, but with so much mixed media on the background, I didn't want to use the tape runner. I was worried that it wouldn't hold well enough, and I didn't want to add any more dimension. And these tape rolls are very sticky. They will absolutely hold that photo in place. And unlike the other ones I've used in the past, this one peeled off so easily. It was like a dream. So yeah, I have no problem using these on my layouts. Normally I get super frustrated because it's super hard to peel off the backing of the tape, but yeah, that didn't happen. Same with this foam adhesive that I've used on my title. I get a little bit frustrated with them sometimes because they get super staticky and they're hard to peel off. But again, I did not have that problem with this foam adhesive. So I highly recommend these adhesives, and I know that I did receive them for free, and I do have an affiliate link for them, but I would absolutely recommend them even if I did not. Of course, you guys know that I'm not going to endorse anything that I don't actually like using, so I'm super impressed with these adhesives and how they worked for this page. Okay, so I'm just lining up my title. I had considered doing kind of a bouncing title, like making the letters not straight and bouncing them up and down, but I felt like there was a lot going on already on this page, and I didn't want it to feel too busy. So by lining up the title in a straight line, it's going to make it feel a little bit more ordered, a little bit less busy. I'm just using my T-square ruler to make sure that those lines are straight, and just gluing each one down. It didn't actually take as long as I thought it would. Okay, so now I can start adhering all of these floral clusters in the places where I had them. When I took them off, I kept them in the clusters where I had them kind of off to the side, so it was easy to just go back and add each one where they were originally. And I am using some of that same foam tape to, or foam adhesive, to create multiple layers here. So I added the sticker on top of the photo and then some foam behind it to lift it up off the page, and then I'm adding a layer that's directly adhered to the background, and then there's going to be a middle layer as well with some additional foam tape behind it. So really kind of 3 layers of florals that just gives it lots of dimension, lots of interest. You get to see the kind of shadows behind, and then the layer that I do add directly to the background, I am also adding foam behind some of the edges, especially on those leaves, the little like sprigs of leaves that come off to the side, to again pull those up on the ends and add additional dimension to the page. Okay, I'm doing the same thing to the top cluster, just adding lots of different layers, lots of different levels, and getting those in exactly the spots I want them. And then I can do the third cluster, which is going to go right next to the Y of the beginning of my title. And again, just creating different layers with foam adhesive, different levels of embellishment. Okay, So once that is all adhered down to the page, I decide that I felt like it needed a little bit more pattern, a little bit more color. I know it's already super busy, but the top and bottom of the page just looked a little bit empty to me. So I'm going to do that thing that I seem to do on nearly every layout I create. I'm going to take my scissors and I'm going to rough cut a chunk of the background at the bottom and the top, and then add some pattern paper behind it to bring in just some more color to the top and bottom of the page. So that is what I'm going to do right now. I'm just using my scissors, rough cutting just a chunk out of the bottom. I'm going to use the edge of the scissors to distress it, and then use my fingers to kind of pull up and tear little bits of the paper there to make it look nice and rugged and textured. And then I'm going to cut a little piece of this pink paper to add behind there, just using my tape runner to glue that down and lining it up with the edge of the page. I do go back and add just some washi tape to the back of it later on off camera, just to make sure that that stays in place and that those edges don't get caught when I put it in the album. And then I'm going to do the same thing at the top, except I realized I had a piece of that stripe paper just sitting there, a little scrap from when I backed my photo, and I decided to use that there instead of the pink. I am going to add a few more stickers. So the stripe paper and one of the floral clusters has some of that darker kind of orangey red color that's in this collection, and I hadn't used that anywhere else on the page. So I decided to add a couple hearts and a couple ladybugs just to add that color in and make a little bit more sense on the page. And then I'm also using the scrapbook.com glitter brush to add some shine on top of those pink rainbow pieces. So they ended up being super bright, kind of neon, and I wanted to tone them down a little bit and add a little bit of sparkle as well. So this glitter brush just adds a little bit of shimmer to the top of them, and it toned down that pink a little bit and made them sparkle a little bit, and I really like the way that that looks. So I'm just going to add a couple more stickers to the page to finish it off, and then I go away and type up the rest of my title. Like I said, it's going to be "You Are My Sunshine, You Make Me Happy When Skies Are Gray." I just typed that up on some white cardstock, cut it into strips, and I'm going to add it here to the bottom of my title to finish it off. Then I will add a date stamp, and then that is finally going to be it for this page. It was kind of a long one, guys. Sorry about that, but I didn't want to cut out any more than I did, just so that you could see all of the process. So there are lots of close-up photos coming up, and as always, I've linked all of the products that I've used here down below, so you can go check them out if you so desire. Thank you all so much for watching, and I will see you all back here very soon.